welcome to The Wire. I am Shekhar Singh, and today we are going to be talking about a very important story, which is exposing gaps within India's food security program. And we have with us on the show the reporter who's revealed to the world that how the fortification program may actually be bad for Indians. So I welcome on the show Shri Girish. Girish, welcome to the show. And my first question to you is, what is happening here? You have had 3 explosive stories revealing major gaps in the nutrition program. And by that, what I mean is that the 80 crore Indians who are supposed to be fed on government rations today, as per your story, and this is a straight out of your story, that they are being given sub-quality rice, which is fortified and not good for people's health, nor is it palatable. And also, it is bad for health. And you have repeatedly said that in your story. Now, can we begin with your first story? And can you just run us through of what you've discovered and what you've unearthed?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me on the show. Secondly, just to give a very small brief on what fortified rice actually is that we, the Reporters Collective, worked on. So fortified rice is basically created by taking normal natural rice grains, beating them into a dough, adding chemicals, micronutrients to it, and then taking this dough, little atta, and machine carving it into grains that actually resemble natural rice grains, but are not natural at all. They are chemically laced. And these one such rice grain, which is called fortified rice kernel, is mixed with 100 normal rice grains. And this is what is being fed across all government schemes. And by 2024, 80 crore Indians will be eating this. And this goes from ICDS program, midday meal programs in schools, in Anganwadi centers where pregnant lactating mothers eat this rice. And of course, you have the PDS ration that you're talking about. So to answer your question, Shekhar, the problem is not with fortification itself, or at least that's not how we are approaching it. The question that needs to be asked is, on what basis is the government actually doing this, right? Because nutrition is a very complex subject, which is what experts have constantly told us. You can't have a one-size-fits-all solution, right? So just to give a very minor nuance over here, the required intake of iron for men and women will be different. And this is something that ICMR's, which is again a government agency, ICMR's own study conducted by National Institute for Nutrition, they showed this quite categorically, and based on a request from FSSAI itself. So you clearly can't have this one-size-fits-all solution. And iron is not, unlike let's say some other micronutrients, it's not a soluble micronutrient. If there is excess iron in the body, it can lead to debilitating side effects. And there are specific categories of people who suffer from sickle cell anemia, thalassemia, who are not supposed to eat food that is rich in iron. And it can actually worsen their condition. It can lead to organ damage, etc. And the outcomes can be far worse. And if you look at who is being fed fortified rice right now, up until now, it's people living in tribal districts. It's people who are malnourished. And this is the section of population where thalassemia, sickle cell anemia is the highest. And a concerning thing is that while the government claims that fortified rice gunny bags carry a label that say, in logon ko ye feed nahi karna chahiye, the labels are in English. And secondly, you need to ask the question, how many people will be aware that they actually suffer from these diseases? We found instances when we went to Jharkhand, Kuchiasholi, where a girl was being fed fortified rice and she suffers from sickle cell anemia. She has had blood transfusion done earlier, and she was still eating it. So, there's a complete lack of awareness here, and the government in RTI responses has admitted that there is no way to screen who actually is eating this food. So, that's where the problems begin. Secondly, we are talking about a population that does not actually have the power of choice. right? अगर हमें ये market में जो available है, if I want to eat more iron or you want to eat more iron, then we can go out and buy that for ourselves. But these are people who don't have that choice. They survive on this food, and they eat it twice a day. So who's really monitoring this? And that's where the whole question of on what basis have you done this? And that's where the story one goes into the pilots. For example, the government launched 15 pilots, one pilot in each district per state. 15 states had consented. And most of these pilots have never taken off. Till date, the government has results of only one pilot study, and the results are ridiculous, as we have documented there. So you need to ask that question. I mean,
Shrikish, I'll just butt in a little bit. And can you
Sure.
elaborate on what when you say that the first study was not successful and has muddled up data? What are you trying to say? And this is for the benefit of people who've not read your article. Could you elaborate on this a little bit?
So the one study that the government had before the Prime Minister publicly ordered that this fortified rice be supplied to 80 crore Indians was done by Tata Trust in collaboration with Maharashtra government in Gadchiroli district, 2 blocks of Gadchiroli district. The total population where this rice was supplied is around 1 lakh people. So the findings of the report, I mean, they say that hemoglobin level improve ho gaya population mein, which is desirable for them. But it also has some quite amusing findings. The pilot study also found that people who ate fortified rice, for example, also were able to successfully curb their smoking habits. And in another instance, they say that the village in which they did not supply fortified rice saw alcoholism among mothers rise by 350%. And in the village where fortified rice was supplied, the rise in alcoholism was a bit more modest. It was around 20%. Even in their official responses to the reporter's corrective, Tata Trust told us that primary healthcare in the villages have improved, full immunization has been achieved, etc. And one needs to ask the question, how is this related to fortified rice? How is immunization related to fortified rice? How is smoking or drinking related to fortified rice? Other parts of the study also look at stunting and wasting, which are important micronutrient indicators. And if you look at, so they supplied fortified rice in 2 villages, and they did not supply fortified rice in 1 village, which is the control village. And if you look at the results that they have put out, the control village actually did better on some indicators than the villages where fortified rice was given. So, for example, moderate stunting among men in the control village seemed to reduce more than the place where fortified rice was given. So, I mean, you need to ask these questions. Where is this coming from? And that's the only study, unfortunately, that the government has relied on. They were supposed to do 15 studies. It was supposed to be robust, and all this scientific data was supposed to be aggregated. They were supposed to review it. None of that has happened. So they only had one study before the Prime Minister actually went and publicly announced this fact. And even if you look at what the government said in Parliament when they were asked specifically about the success of pilot scheme, they said that we have one study, again referring to the Gadchiroli wala Tata Trust ka study, and they said it was useful. That's it. They did not get into the nutritional merits.
Can India's nutrition for 80 crore people be based on one unscientific study?
So, as far as the Tata Trust study goes, and we have reported this, it has not been published in any journal. The results have not been peer reviewed. So, I mean, as a journalist, it's not something that I can say whether something is scientific or unscientific. But what I can tell you and the viewers is that we did speak to important experts like Dr. H.P.S. Deva, Dr. Kurpad, etc. And these experts categorically told us that the Tata Trust study is very poorly designed. So, I mean, we can take their word for it. Secondly, one needs to question what is the hurry. When you have planned 15 pilots, you have the results of only one, majority of them did not even take off, then why are you doing this? As far as the second question goes about this being a disaster, nutrition disaster, I mean, that's again something that experts can tell you, but it baffles one. Why would you go into this? Unless you have hard evidence, unless you know for a fact that uh, this won't cause negative effects, forget positive impact. You at least need to be sure that this won't cause any negative effects. And I'm not sure if the government has actually looked into that. And as far as evidence goes, they only had results of one pilot study, but then they sort of compiled their own list of studies.
Mhm.
And we found this in a presentation that the Department of Food had given to the Minister, Piyush Goyal. And this list had 13 papers. One of them is Tata Trust ka paper. And the rest of them, interestingly, all of them, I mean, they have cherry picked certain papers. We can talk about who these papers are affiliated to, etc. in a bit.
Mhm.
But if you look at these papers, some of them clearly say that there is no visible effect on anemia, even in the list that the government has compiled. One of them is co-authored by a very well-known professor, Professor Anurag Kurpad, who has publicly been criticizing the scheme and who has written multiple columns saying there is no need for such a scheme of mandatory rice fortification scheme like the one that the government has envisioned. And ironically, this is also in the list of evidence that the government is tom-tomming inside to justify its scheme. So yeah, that's
But see, definitely you've already stated in your article also, and we've touched upon this earlier, that if you eat too much iron, it can have bad health effects for you, right? And the second question of absorption, like it does not mean that if there is micronutrients within the rice, that does not mean that the rice is the vehicle for absorption of that iron. So you may be stuffing down iron in someone's system, but if the carrier is not there, the carrier food is not there, the iron will never be absorbed in the system. It's not
right.
like, right? So given this knowledge that is in your article, and also this is present, like this is public knowledge, why would the government take such a step? Is there some financial, are there financial incentives? Is there a money trail that we can trace for the introduction of fortified rice?
Right. So that's right, Indrashekar. And I mean, the government admits this, in fact. So the Department of Food, in one of its notes, actually said that one of the prime objectives is to give fillip to the FRK industry, referring to the fortified rice kernel industry. And they constantly talk about, how we need to scale this up, how we need to talk about economies of scale, how we need to create demand. And they even set up a resource center within the FSSAI geared specifically for this, to nudge states to create demand for fortification. And that's actually where we get into the other side of the story of the financial involvement. So just to let the viewers know, premix, the powder that is put into the in fortified rice, the micronutrient powder, it's known as premix, and this is a major industry within the nutrition wellness wala sector. And one of its biggest players is a Dutch firm called Royal DSM. The Netherlands, just for some context, is I think the second biggest exporter of agriculture in the world. It's a agricultural powerhouse. And DSM is a formerly state-owned company that the Netherlands government later divested, etc. So this company, it admits on its website that it works with NGOs and governments to, for the betterment of the world. That's how they put it. They want to ensure that poor people from around the world, especially the developing countries, have access to good food and micronutrient deficiencies go down. And this from the Royal DSM has links to certain non-profits. We have been able to identify 6 of those, and these 6 non-profits with links to Royal DSM are partners of the resource center created by our government, which works specifically towards creating demand for fortification.
So wait a second. Are you in effect saying that there is an unfair preference given to Royal DSM because of the cartelization that is happening between the 6 NGOs, the Fasai fortification program, and this foreign firm? Or
Rather than,
undue preference has been given to these people?
well, I mean, we haven't found evidence to call it undue preference. I'm sorry.
But once you say, but see, you correctly said right now that the government itself, the food department itself has said that we want to encourage this, and that's why we are pushing for this. Have you not said this?
Yeah, that is definitely true. They have said
they are
it,
creating a
and
demand. They are creating, and I think you use the word, they want to encourage the thing, so that they're creating the demand for such a product. Right?
Yes,
and the second thing, please.
Coincidentally, and coincidentally, one of the world's biggest premix manufacturers happens to be the biggest player here. And this, as we spoke to experts, is a clear case of, as experts told us, is a clear case of conflict of interest. And the non-profits sitting within FSSAI have immense, not just access, but even influence over the policy. They openly admit that they were also involved in, for example, setting the standards for fortification.
Wow. So you mean private NGOs with connection to the supplier of the premix have policy influence within the FSAI? Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes, absolutely correct. And not just policy, but specifically setting the standards, which relates to the premix that the company that donates to them manufactures.
So basically, the companies in touch and tied with the Royal DSM are setting the tender for the procurement of the premix. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, if they're setting the standards, that sets everything from tenders to the whole gamut of whatever is going to happen. It's set when you talk about standards. And these global NGOs, they are doing that. They are admitting that this is what we do. And they have attended very high-level meetings. There have been meetings within FSSAI where Royal DSM itself has been a participant. And this particular meeting, it was quite. We read the minutes of the meeting, and it was quite amusing to read them, because the government invited certain industry players to talk about premix pricing. And the only rice premix supplier they could find was DSM, and DSM,
as for the standards given by the NGO partners.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and they even decided their price range in these meetings.
So let's leave the nutrition aside for a minute. But is there a calculation of loss to the exchequer because of this collusion? Is there an estimate or that you've come up with?
No, we can't actually at this stage do something like that. That would require, I mean, first of all, we'll have to see if there were other options, other players, etc. I mean, we surely know that there are other players, but what is the process followed in picking these particular NGOs? Has the government actually investigated their links, etc.? I mean, that would require a separate investigation, I'm afraid. But an interesting aside, while we do talk about the links, is that one of the NGOs, it's called GAIN, Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition. It's actually quite a big NGO in this sector. GAIN's country director here in India actually wrote an email to FSSAI's then CEO in 2017, where he actually informed the CEO that GAIN is being funded by the Netherlands government to work on fortification in India.
Wow.
And yes, to work specifically on fortification in India. And the FSSAI was aware of this. And this is again an email that we accessed within from government documents itself. So yes, that's how deep the ties run.
Wow.
And certainly the government has not been blindsided. This is one thing we can tell really from the email.
So as a person who's uncovering all this data and the documents and, through RTI and other things, what do you think has really happened here? Like, is this another Jumla? Is this another, let's just say, is this Indian people being robbed of their nutrition and also their health to help a Dutch firm? Because from everything that you've told me, first, basically people are not liking it. There are some serious nutritional concerns when it comes to iron. And the case of iron, your article also talks about how people do not like the taste of this kind of rice. Okay.
And in fact, they discard it. We have seen that even in schools, they remove the fortified rice kernel. They call it plastic rice. And there have been rumors, there have been panic across the country, and they discard this stuff. It is a complete waste of all the money. Anyway,
so the people don't like it. It's not good for their health. There is then an emerging collusion between the Dutch firm, the NGO sitting on the FSI panel, who are setting the standards. Okay, so it's a classic cartelization which is happening here for economic benefit of a few people. Now, am I going too far with this statement, or is this actually how things are, and it's even deeper and more sinister?
I mean, we for a fact know very clearly from looking at the documents that there has been intense lobbying. We know for a fact that government manuals on fortification are plagiarized from toolkits produced by these non-profits. We for a fact know that seminars on fortification are jointly organized by government officials and these non-profits. So I mean the viewer can very clearly conclude by this. And I mean, if you talk to experts and even officials for that matter, there is the problem of rising micronutrient deficiency and anemia is quite serious. And there is a very clear solution that has been given for many years now. The solution is to diversify diets. The solution is to provide a wide variety of food to right holders under various schemes. I mean, there's a very popular slogan in some of the villages where we went, "Hamara khana kaisa ho, hamare tirange jaisa ho." Just like the tiranga
the
is
diet should be like diverse as our national flag.
Yes, exactly. As colorful as our national flag. There's a very simple way to go about this. But as we have seen, the Modi government is quite reluctant to open up its purse strings as far as food security is concerned, at least. I mean, as we have reported earlier, the government has actually argued in Supreme Court to reduce the number of beneficiaries under National Food Security Act. So it is a bit of a stretch to expect from the central government at this point that they will diversify diets to mitigate micronutrient deficiency. That is where the point about giving flip to FRK industry and creating demand for fortification comes in. This is an easy way out. It is one that involves industry. It is one that involves big business. And yes, the government has gone for that. And,
no, but does it work? See, if it worked, I agree with you 100%. But through your own like statements and articles, you've clearly highlighted that it does not work. Like, although it's an industry-backed solution, it does not help counter malnutrition or nutrition deficiency. So why are we talking it even as a solution?
If it did work, then the government would have evidence for it, and as we clearly know, they don't. And I think the government has gone in down this route because there has been intense lobbying from non-profits, again linked to a company that stands to gain directly from the process. And as we found, and this is publicly available information, all of these non-profits in 2016 they held a symposium where they talked about how they need to scale up rice fortification, especially in developing countries. And they specifically highlighted that the policy advocacy bit is missing and we need to work on that. I mean, the viewer can think if it's a coincidence, just a month after this symposium, India had its Food Fortification Resource Center with these same NGOs sitting as partners. So, I mean, the picture is clear.
And just the last question, like, did this symposium fund the creation of the cell within FSI? Is there some monetary links between FSI and these NGOs that you've been able to uncover?
So we know for a fact that one NGO, which is the Indian NGO, Tata Trust, it has actually put in a lot of money into this resource center. And
how much? When you say a lot of money, how much is there?
I mean, the FSCI itself claims that it's a jointly run program, and but we don't have a figure yet. about how much money has actually been spent. But just to give a sense of how much these non-profits are actually involved, they are also involved on ground, which is what we saw even in our travel. They have met rice millers across the country, even in the most remote districts. And more interestingly, if you look at the confidential report that we got from Niti Aayog, Niti Aayog officials found that FSSAI officials were not active on ground. They had abdicated their role entirely. But at the same time, they noted that these non-profits, whom they call development partners, they were quite active. Right from information, education campaigns, to implementation, technical know-how, everything. So these non-profits have actually been leading the policy in some way across the country on the ground. And the government food regulator, whose job was actually to ensure all of these things happen, has abdicated its role. That room will tell you what's happening.
Wow. So Girish, thank you for thank you for talking with us. This has been a major news break. Thank you for doing the story. And viewers, if you liked our conversation, don't forget to read the articles on the Reporters Collective initiative, and where all the articles are present, and make up your own mind. We at The Wire do not stand by any view, but we encourage independently viewers to make their own decisions after taking care of all the facts and looking at all the facts. So Shri Girish, once again, thank you very much for being with us. And I hope this story helps Indians understand the nutritional game that's being played with them for profits of allegedly a foreign corporation. So thank you very much once again. And viewers, don't leave The Wire. We have more shows coming for you very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
To receive instant updates on all videos from The Wire, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Pay to support independent journalism. Click the link in the description and choose the amount you want to pay.